Case 1. Joanne Dennehy. On March 19, 2013, in Peterborough, Cambridgeshire, England, Joanne Dennehy began a killing spree that would shock Britain. Her first victim, 31-year-old Łukasz Slabuszewski, marked the beginning of a series of murders driven by pure sadistic pleasure. Born in St. Albans, Dennehy came from a middle-class family. By her teenage years, behavioral problems emerged, and she left home at 16. Her adult life spiraled through substance abuse and unstable relationships, setting the stage for violence. In early 2013, she lured Łukasz to a property in Orton Goldhay, where she stabbed him multiple times until he died. Days later, she murdered her landlord, 48-year-old John Chapman. Then came 56-year-old Kevin Lee, whose body was found in a ditch dressed in a black sequin dress, a final humiliation. After fleeing Peterborough, Dennehy's bloodlust wasn't satisfied. She attacked two men in Hereford, Robin Bereza and John Rogers. Both survived, but barely. Police spotted her in Hereford on April 10, 2013, ending her rampage. During interrogation, Dennehy showed no remorse. She laughed while describing the murders, stating chillingly that she killed for fun. Her trial at the Old Bailey in November 2013 was brief. She pleaded guilty to 3 counts of murder and 2 of attempted murder. The judge handed down a whole life order. She would never be released. Dennehy became only the 3rd woman in British history to receive such a sentence. What makes Dennehy unique among female serial killers is her motivation. Most women kill for financial gain, revenge, or attention. Dennehy killed because she enjoyed it. She actively sought victims, hunted them, and reveled in their deaths. As of August 2025, Joanne Dennehy remains incarcerated at HMP Low Newton, having served 12 years of her life sentence without parole. She will die in prison, never again walking free among society. Case 2. Brenda Cecilia Aguero. On March 18, 2022, at the neonatal ward of the neonatal ward of the Ramon Carrillo Maternal Neonatal Hospital in Córdoba, Argentina, Brenda Cecilia Aguero began a series of assaults on newborns under her care. Over the following months, until June 6th, multiple infants experienced sudden cardiac issues or respiratory collapse during shifts for which Aguero was responsible. Brenda was born in Buenos Aires and later moved to Córdoba. She completed nursing school in 2018 and had worked in hospitals since. At the time of the events, she lived with her mother and 2 sisters and held a position that permitted her access to neonates and medical supplies. During the period between March and June 2022, 5 infants died under her watch, while 8 others survived serious medical crises. Autopsies and forensic investigations disclosed abnormally high levels of potassium and insulin in the bodies of deceased infants, levels inconsistent with natural medical conditions. Prosecution evidence showed Aguero had obtained doses from emergency carts and concealed syringes. Medical records and timestamps placed her on shift during all 13 incidents. One mother testified she saw Aguero take her baby, move away, and return just before the child ceased breathing. Witnesses also noted that Aguero often wore long sleeves even in warm weather, which colleagues found odd. As suspicion grew, hospital administrators and provincial health authorities initiated an internal inquiry. Aguero was arrested on August 19, 2022, and charged with 5 counts of aggravated homicide and 8 counts of attempted homicide. She was held in Bauer Penitentiary in Córdoba in isolation from other inmates. Her trial began on January 6, 2025, at the Córdoba Criminal Court. Psychological evaluations during proceedings characterized her personality as narcissistic and lacking empathy, with traits of dissociative behavior. though experts agreed she was legally sane and fully responsible. Aguero denied all charges and claimed she was made a scapegoat, alleging systemic failures in the hospital. During her trial, she repeatedly refused to admit guilt and sometimes shifted blame onto a colleague, though she didn't produce definitive proof. On June 18, 2025, the court sentenced her to life imprisonment with parole eligibility only after 35 years. At sentencing, she repeated, "I am not that monster that they have created in the media. I understand the pain of the mothers, but I am not the serial killer they made everyone believe." She is convicted of murdering 5 children and attempting to murder 8 more. The families of her victims continue seeking justice and answers. Case 3. Beverly Gail Allitt. In the quiet corridors of Grantham and Kesteven Hospital in Lincolnshire, England, a nightmare unfolded between February and April 1991. Beverly Gail Allitt, a state-enrolled nurse, turned the children's ward into a hunting ground. Born in Corby Glen, Lincolnshire, Beverly craved attention from childhood. She frequently faked illnesses to receive care, displaying classic signs of Munchausen syndrome. This psychological need for attention would evolve into something far more sinister. After completing nursing training, Allitt began working at the hospital. Her career as a killer started on February 21, 1991, when 7-month-old Liam Taylor was admitted with an infection. Allitt administered a lethal insulin dose. Despite desperate resuscitation efforts, the baby died. The deaths continued. 11-year-old Timothy Hardwick, suffering from cerebral palsy, died unexpectedly under her care. Then came the collapses. 1-year-old Becky Phillips, 5-year-old Bradley Gibson, 15-month-old Claire Peck. Becky Phillips died, while her twin sister Katie survived cardiac arrest but suffered permanent brain damage. Medical staff began noticing a disturbing pattern. Stable patients deteriorated only when Allitt supervised them. Blood tests revealed unexplained insulin and potassium levels, clear signs of deliberate poisoning. By April 1991, another suspicious death prompted hospital administration to contact Lincolnshire police. Forensic analysis of exhumed victims confirmed elevated insulin concentrations impossible through accidental administration. Allitt was arrested on November 21, 1991. During questioning, she denied everything. Psychiatrists later diagnosed her with Munchausen syndrome by proxy, a disorder where individuals harm others for attention or sympathy. Her 1993 trial at Nottingham Crown Court presented damning evidence linking her to the overdoses. Falsified medical charts and suspicious shift patterns sealed her fate. The convictions came down hard. 4 counts of murder, 11 counts of attempted murder, and 11 counts of grievous bodily harm. The court sentenced her to 13 concurrent life terms. Due to her psychological condition, Allitt was transferred to Rampton Secure Hospital in Nottinghamshire, a high-security psychiatric facility. Her victims totaled 4 murdered children and 9 more injured. As of August 2025, Beverly Gail Allitt remains detained at Rampton Secure Hospital, where she served over 33 years. She will likely never be released, continuing to receive psychiatric care under indefinite detention orders. The angel of death sits behind secure walls, her need for attention finally satisfied in the worst possible way. Case 4. Vickie Dawn Jackson. She was a registered nurse in Nocona General Hospital in Nocona, Texas. Between 1999 and 2002, a series of unexplained patient deaths occurred under her supervision. The victims were elderly or seriously ill patients, many expected to recover before their sudden fatal declines. Born and raised in Texas, Vickie Dawn Jackson was regarded by colleagues as competent and professional, a mother of 2. Co-workers initially saw her as calm, though some noticed changes following personal and marital difficulties. During her time at the hospital, an unusual pattern emerged. Patients who'd been stable began dying unexpectedly, often during her night shifts. These deaths drew attention after the hospital pharmacist discovered several vials of the powerful muscle relaxant mivacrone were missing. The medicine, used for anesthesia, could cause respiratory failure if improperly administered. Authorities launched an investigation in 2002 after identifying 10 suspicious deaths, all occurring under Jackson's care. One victim, Nakona's former mayor Monty McCoy, died after being admitted for minor treatment. Another patient, Ethel Jenkins, who'd been recovering steadily, died suddenly after Jackson entered her room. Medical staff began quietly reporting concerns, and Jackson was eventually suspended pending inquiry. When investigators analyzed tissue samples, traces of mivacrone were found in multiple patients' bodies. Jackson was arrested in July 2002 and charged with capital murder. During interrogation, she denied accusations, suggesting she was being framed by hospital administration. However, prosecutors built a strong case around drug theft records, witness testimonies, and toxicology evidence. At trial in 2006, held in Montague County, Jackson faced 10 counts of capital murder. To avoid the death penalty, she agreed to a plea deal and entered a no-contest plea to a single count of murder. She was sentenced to life imprisonment with no possibility of parole. Vickie Dawn Jackson murdered a total of 10 patients. Her motive remains unclear. Was it mercy killing, a God complex, or something darker? She's never provided a clear explanation. As of August 2025, she remains in prison, having served 19 years of a life sentence without parole. 10 families continue mourning loved ones who entered a hospital for healing but never returned home. Case 5. Irina Gaidamachuk. Irina was born in Nyagan, Russia, and grew up in a troubled household marked by poverty and alcoholism. She began drinking heavily during her teenage years and struggled to maintain steady employment as an adult. By her late 20s, she was married to Yuri Gaidamachuk with 2 children. Her husband was often away working, and her alcohol addiction worsened. Denied welfare support due to drinking habits, she resorted to theft to sustain her dependence. Between 2002 and 2010, she carried out a series of brutal murders across the Sverdlovsk region, targeting elderly women living alone. Her method was calculated and cruel. Her first known murder occurred in the town of Krasnoufomsk in 2002. Posing as a social worker offering pension benefits or government assistance, she gained entry into homes of older women. Once inside, she would attack them with a hammer or axe, striking them in the head before stealing money, jewelry, or valuables to buy alcohol. Over 8 years, she repeated this method across multiple towns and nearby villages. The victims, all women aged between 70 and 90, often lived alone and were trusting of visitors. The murders remained unsolved for years as investigators initially suspected a male offender. In 2010, police noticed a pattern and identified Gaidamachuk through witness descriptions and forensic evidence linking her to crime scenes. She was arrested in May 2010 after attempting to rob another elderly woman who survived and provided a description. During interrogation, Gaidamachuk confessed to 17 murders, but claimed she acted out of desperation for money to buy vodka. Her husband later told authorities he'd been unaware of her crimes, but suspected her of theft. The trial revealed the horrifying reality. For 8 years, elderly women opened their doors to what they believed was help, only to face brutal death. The court sentenced her to 20 years in a penal colony, citing her cooperation and confession as mitigating factors. She was imprisoned at a women's correctional colony in Mordovia. Irina Gaidamachuk's case highlights the vulnerability of elderly populations and how addiction can fuel violence. 17 women, each living quietly in their final years, were murdered for small amounts of money and valuables, all to feed an alcohol addiction. Case 6. Tamara Ivanyutina. She was arrested in Kiev, Ukrainian SSR, in March 1987 after a series of mysterious poisonings at the school where she worked as a cafeteria cook. Born into a family with a long criminal history, she grew up where manipulation and greed were normalized. By her early 40s, she developed a pattern of using poison as a means of control and gain, a habit learned from her parents, who'd also been convicted for similar crimes. In February 1987, several students and teachers at the school began suffering severe stomach pain and vomiting after eating meals she prepared. 2 children and 1 teacher died. Investigators soon discovered Tamara had laced the food with a highly toxic substance originally intended as rat poison. A search of her home revealed more evidence connecting her to other suspicious deaths, including her husband, brother-in-law, and several acquaintances. She was arrested and confessed to multiple murders, stating she used poison to remove unpleasant people and settle personal grievances. The total number of victims was 6, including family members and co-workers. Her confession led to the discovery that her sister and parents had also used the substance to murder others for profit or convenience, a family business of death. Tamara was charged with multiple counts of murder and attempted murder. The trial revealed a woman who viewed poison as a solution to life's inconveniences. Disliked someone? Poison them. Wanted inheritance? Poison them. Disagreement at work? Poison them. She was found guilty and sentenced to death. On November 21, 1987, Tamara Ivanyutina was executed by shooting, a common method in the Soviet Union. Her case represents familial criminal behavior passed down through generations. The knowledge of how to poison, where to obtain substances, and how to avoid detection was taught like any other family trade. The children who died in February 1987 went to school expecting a normal day. Instead, they ate poisoned food prepared by a woman who viewed their lives as expendable. 2 families lost children because Tamara decided they were unpleasant people worth removing. Case 7. Lori Vallow Daybell. She was born in California in 1973 and grew up in a traditional Mormon household. Outwardly, she lived an ordinary life. She married young, raised children, and was active in her church. Yet beneath the surface, Lori's life was marked by a growing obsession with spiritual visions and apocalyptic beliefs that would eventually lead to tragedy. By her mid-40s, Lori had been married multiple times and was the mother of 3 children. Friends described her as attractive, charming, and devoted to her faith. But over time, her beliefs became extreme. She began following fringe religious teachings that combined Mormon doctrine with prophecies about the end times and dark spiritual forces. In 2018, Lori was introduced to Chad Daybell, a self-published author and doomsday preacher who claimed to receive visions from God. Chad believed that the world was about to end and that some people were possessed by dark spirits he called zombies. Lori quickly became infatuated with him and his apocalyptic worldview. Together, they came to see themselves as chosen to lead others through the coming destruction.
As Lori's relationship with Chad deepened, those close to her began to notice disturbing changes. Her marriage to her fourth husband, Charles Vallow, deteriorated as she accused him of being possessed and threatened his life. In July 2019, Charles was shot and killed by Lori's brother, Alex Cox, who claimed self-defense. The killing raised suspicion, but no immediate charges were filed. Only months later, Lori's two youngest children, Tylee Ryan, 16, and Joshua JJ, 7, vanished without explanation. Lori told different stories to friends and authorities, claiming the children were safe or living elsewhere. Her evasive behavior prompted a national search and intense media coverage. During this same period, Chad's wife, Tammy Daybell, died suddenly in Idaho. Chad claimed she had died in her sleep, but investigators later determined she was asphyxiated. Just weeks after Tammy's death, Lori and Chad married on a beach in Hawaii, raising further suspicion. In June 2020, after months of public pressure, investigators searching Chad's property discovered the remains of Tylee and JJ buried in shallow graves. The grim discovery shocked the nation and revealed the depth of Lori and Chad's delusions. Lori was charged with multiple counts of first-degree murder and conspiracy to commit murder for the deaths of her children and Tammy Daybell. Prosecutors argued that the couple's religious fanaticism, mixed with greed and lust for power, drove them to kill anyone who stood in their way. In 2023, after a highly publicized trial, Lori Vallow Daybell was found guilty on all major counts. She showed little emotion as the verdict was read, maintaining that she believed her children were happy and safe in the afterlife. Lori was sentenced to life imprisonment without the possibility of parole. Her husband, Chad Daybell, still awaits trial. The case remains one of the most disturbing examples of how religious delusion and manipulation can turn belief into brutality, and how a mother once seen as loving and faithful became a killer in the name of prophecy.
Case 8. Tamara Samsonova. She was a Russian woman whose crimes took place in St. Petersburg, Russia. Her arrest in late July 2015 revealed one of the most unsettling cases in the country's recent history. Born in the early 1940s in Uzhur, Krasnoyarsk Krai, Tamara later moved to Leningrad, where she graduated from the Linguistic State University and worked in the hospitality industry, including long employment at a major hotel. For decades, she was considered quiet, polite, and reclusive by neighbors who saw little sign of violence. The crimes began to unfold over a span of nearly 2 decades. Police suspected Samsonova may have started killing as far back as the late 1990s. Her first known victim was her husband, Alexei Samsonov, who disappeared around 1999. Despite numerous searches and missing person reports, his body was never recovered. Years later, in 2015, the disappearance and subsequent discovery of dismembered body parts in St. Petersburg's Frunzensky district brought renewed attention to her. The remains were identified as belonging to her 79-year-old friend and roommate, Valentina Ulanova. Investigators learned Tamara had moved in with Ulanova to help care for her, but the relationship had soured over time. On the night of the killing, after a dispute over household chores, Tamara allegedly sedated Valentina with sleeping pills before cutting her throat with a hacksaw. She then dismembered the body using kitchen knives and a saw, placing remains in plastic bags which she disposed of in nearby streets. Surveillance cameras captured her carrying the bags outside the building. When confronted by police, Tamara appeared calm and cooperative. A search of her apartment revealed a diary written in both Russian and English, where she described several killings in great detail, including possible earlier victims. She was taken into custody and charged with murder. During court hearings, Tamara displayed little emotion and even appeared to smile on several occasions. She told investigators she'd been mentally ill and had long been under psychiatric supervision. The court ordered a full psychiatric
psychiatric evaluation, which found her unfit to stand trial due to chronic paranoid schizophrenia. Instead of imprisonment, she was committed indefinitely to a secure psychiatric hospital. Tamara Samsonova was responsible for at least 2 confirmed murders, though investigators believe the number may be higher. The attacks were carried out using knives, saws, and sedatives. As of August 2025, Tamara Samsonova remains confined to the Kazan Special Psychiatric Hospital in Russia, where she served approximately 10 years under compulsory treatment. She was 71 at the time of her arrest and remains institutionalized with no release date.
Case 9. Rosemary West. On February 24, 1994, police officers in Gloucester, England, discovered human remains buried at 25 Cromwell Street, the home of Rosemary West and her husband Frederick West. The investigation revealed a series of brutal murders spanning over 2 decades, making the couple among Britain's most infamous serial killers. Rosemary Pauline West, born in Devon, England, had a troubled upbringing marked by instability and abuse. In her late teens, she met Frederick West, a man more than 10 years older, and soon became his partner in both life and crime. Together, they lured young women, often runaways or lodgers, into their home where they were assaulted, tortured, and murdered. Victims included their own daughter, Heather West, whose disappearance in 1987 led investigators to reopen inquiries into the family. Frederick West was arrested in February 1994 and later took his own life in prison before trial. Rosemary was charged with 10 counts of murder, including that of her daughter. Her trial began in 1995 at Winchester Crown Court, where she maintained her innocence throughout. The prosecution presented overwhelming evidence of her direct participation in the murders. After 7 weeks, she was convicted on all counts and sentenced to life imprisonment without parole. The case shocked Britain, not just because of the number of victims, but because of the horrific nature of the crimes. Bodies were dismembered, bones were missing, and victims had suffered prolonged torture before death. Rosemary West was convicted of 10 murders. The victims were young women and girls, including her own daughter and stepdaughter. The house at 25 Cromwell Street became synonymous with evil and was eventually demolished. As of August 2025, Rosemary West remains imprisoned, having served over 30 years. She continues to maintain her innocence, claiming her husband acted alone. However, forensic evidence and witness testimony conclusively proved her direct involvement in the murders. The case represents one of Britain's most notorious serial killing partnerships, with Rosemary West standing as one of the country's most reviled female criminals.
Case 10. Anna Marie Hahn. Anna Marie was arrested in Cincinnati, Ohio in August 1937 after a series of suspicious deaths among elderly German men under her care. Born in Bavaria, she immigrated to the United States as a young woman and settled in Cincinnati's German community. She was in her mid-20s when she began offering home nursing services to elderly men, presenting herself as a kind caregiver. The German immigrant community trusted her. She spoke their language, understood their customs, and seemed genuinely caring. Her first known victim was Ernest Kohler, who died suddenly after falling ill while under her care. Soon after, Albert Palmer, George Obendorfer, and Jacob Wagner also died in similar circumstances, each leaving her money or valuables. When George Heiss, another client, became ill in July 1937, doctors discovered arsenic in his system. He survived long enough to alert authorities. Subsequent autopsies of her previous patients revealed lethal doses of arsenic and other poisons. Anna was arrested and charged with murder. During her trial in November 1937, prosecutors presented medical evidence and bank records showing she'd stolen money from her victims. She denied intent to murder, claiming she only wanted to ease their pain. But the evidence told a different story. She systematically targeted vulnerable elderly men, gained their trust, poisoned them, and took their money. The jury found her guilty of first-degree murder for the death of Jacob Wagner. She was sentenced to death and imprisoned at Ohio State Penitentiary. On December 7, 1938, at age 32, Anna Marie Hahn was executed in the electric chair, becoming the first woman executed in Ohio's electric chair. Her execution drew crowds and media attention. What makes Hahn's case particularly tragic is the betrayal of community trust. The elderly German men who hired her were often lonely immigrants who found comfort in her familiar language and customs. They believed she would care for them in their final years. Instead, she hastened their deaths for financial gain. Her victims died alone, in pain, poisoned by the very person they'd invited into their homes.
Case 11. Martha Beck. She was born in Florida and endured a difficult upbringing marked by poverty and abuse. As a young woman, she became pregnant out of wedlock, which carried heavy social stigma at that time. She eventually worked as a nurse and later as an undertaker's assistant. Struggling with weight and health issues while facing repeated rejection in her personal life, by her late 20s, Martha showed signs of emotional instability and desperate need for companionship. Her life changed when she connected with Raymond Fernandez through a newspaper Lonely Hearts advertisement. Fernandez, an ex-convict, had begun corresponding with women for financial gain. When Beck joined him, they devised a plan to defraud women and, in some cases, resorted to murder. By the late 1940s, the pair moved across several states using false identities and luring women through romantic promises. The crimes escalated in New York and Michigan. Janet Fay, a wealthy widow, was targeted and murdered after questioning Fernandez about his intentions. Her body was hidden in Beck's home. Later, in Grand Rapids, Michigan, the pair lodged with Delphine Downing and her young daughter. Beck grew jealous and distraught over Downing's suspicions. Fernandez shot Downing, and Beck then killed the child, fearing she would reveal their crime. The sequence of murders between the late 1940s shocked communities as authorities pieced together a trail of fraud, deception, and homicide tied to the couple. They were arrested in Michigan in 1949 after neighbors raised suspicions about Downing's disappearance. Extradited to New York, Fernandez and Beck were charged with first-degree murder in Janet Fay's case, as Michigan law didn't allow capital punishment. Their joint trial drew attention because of their unusual devotion to each other. Beck insisted she acted out of loyalty to Fernandez, while Fernandez portrayed himself as manipulated by her. In March 1951, both were convicted and sentenced to death by electric chair at Sing Sing prison. Beck showed little remorse during sentencing, claiming she'd found happiness with Fernandez despite their crimes. She didn't appeal extensively, accepting the sentence with resignation. Martha Beck was executed at Sing Sing prison in March 1951, roughly 2 years after her arrest. She was executed by electrocution at age 31. In total, Martha and Raymond Fernandez were officially convicted of murdering 3 people, but investigators suspected the pair murdered as many as 17 to 20 victims across several U.S. states.
Case 12. Jeanne Weber. Jeanne was born in Paris, France, and lived a difficult early life marked by poverty and hardship. She married young and had 2 children, both of whom died under unclear circumstances. By her mid-20s, Weber struggled to support herself through domestic work. Her unstable personal life soon became defined by a disturbing pattern of child deaths occurring wherever she was present. Her crimes took place primarily in Paris during the early 1900s, and she became known for the unexplained suffocation of children under her care. The first recognized death occurred when Weber was caring for her own young son. The boy was found lifeless, his death ruled as convulsions. Not long after, similar incidents happened with nieces and nephews belonging to her siblings. In each case, Weber claimed the children had suddenly fallen ill. Between 1905 and 1908, several of these children died while she was the only adult present. Family members initially dismissed suspicion out of trust, but as the pattern continued, concern grew. The turning point came on March 2, 1908 in Paris, when Weber was discovered attempting to strangle her 10-year-old nephew Marcel. He was found unconscious but revived. Marks on his neck and the timing of previous deaths led to her arrest. She was charged with multiple counts of child murder, but was acquitted after her defense argued insanity and lack of evidence. Public opinion was divided. Despite medical experts suggesting mental disorder, Weber was released. After her release, she resumed work as a caretaker and nurse. In 1909, she was employed at a children's home in the French countryside where another child died under similar circumstances. The case led to renewed investigations. Authorities discovered Weber had murdered a young boy named Auguste Bavoux by strangulation, an act she later admitted to. Arrested again, she was deemed mentally unstable by psychiatric examiners and sent to an asylum rather than prison. During confinement, Weber displayed signs of severe mental deterioration, alternating between silence and outbursts. She expressed no coherent explanation for her crimes, and no formal final statement was recorded. She died in the asylum at Fanes, France in 1918 after several years of institutionalization. As of August 2025, Jeanne Weber remains listed in French criminal history as deceased, having served approximately 6 years in psychiatric custody before her death.
Case 13. Lyda Trueblood Southard. She was born in Missouri and later moved to Twin Falls, Idaho, where she became known as one of the earliest female serial killers in the United States. Her life appeared ordinary at first. She worked as a housewife and homemaker, admired in her small community for charm and social grace. Beneath that image was a pattern of deaths that would reveal her as a calculated poisoner who sought financial gain through life insurance policies. Her series of crimes began in Twin Falls in the early 1900s. Her first husband, Robert Dooley, died unexpectedly after a brief illness, which doctors attributed to typhoid fever. Shortly after his death, Lyda collected on his life insurance policy. Within a short time, her brother-in-law, Edward Dooley, who lived with them, also died under similar circumstances. Local physicians found the cases suspicious, but no charges were made. Lyda soon remarried, this time to William McAfee, who died suddenly in Montana. She collected another life insurance payout. Over the next several years, she repeated this pattern with multiple men. Her third husband, Harlan Lewis, died in Billings, Montana. Her fourth, Edward Meyer, died in Montana as well. Her fifth, Paul Southard, also met an unexpected death. Even her young daughter, Lorraine Dooley, was among her victims, succumbing to what was described as a mysterious illness. Authorities eventually noticed the sequence of deaths and insurance claims, leading to suspicions of foul play. In 1921, after exhumation of several victims' bodies, chemists detected arsenic in their remains. Southard was arrested in Honolulu, Hawaii, after fleeing with a new husband using a false identity. She was extradited to Idaho to stand trial. During her 1922 trial, she appeared calm and polite, denying all charges and insisting the deaths were coincidental. The prosecution presented chemical evidence linking her to multiple poisonings. She was convicted of second-degree murder for the death of her fourth husband, Edward Meyer, and sentenced to 10 years to life at Idaho State Penitentiary. While serving her sentence, Southard maintained her innocence, claiming she'd been unfairly judged because she was a woman. In 1931, she escaped from prison using a laundry truck, but was later recaptured in Denver, Colorado, and returned to custody. After serving more than 20 years, she was paroled in 1941 for good behavior. Lyda Southard spent her remaining years quietly in Utah, where she lived under supervision until her death from natural causes in 1958. Case 14. Catherine Wood and Gwendolyn Graham. Catherine Wood was born in Ohio and grew up in a stable but unremarkable household. She worked as a nurse's aide, a position that allowed her close contact with vulnerable patients. By her mid-20s, she was employed at Alpine Manor Nursing Home in Walker, Michigan. There, she met another nurse's aide, Gwendolyn Graham. The two women became close and soon developed an intimate relationship that would evolve into one of the most chilling cases of serial murder in Michigan's history. Between January and February 1987, several elderly female patients at Alpine Manor began dying under what appeared to be natural circumstances. The deaths initially raised no suspicion, as all victims were elderly and suffered from serious health conditions. However, it would later be revealed that Wood and Graham had conspired to murder these patients as part of a private, twisted bond. According to court records, they chose victims who were frail and unlikely to draw immediate medical scrutiny. Gwendolyn Graham was alleged to have physically smothered the victims with washcloths or soft bedding, while Catherine Wood stood watch outside the room or helped with cleanup. Wood later testified that the murders were carried out as a form of emotional gain between them, an act meant to demonstrate loyalty and dominance within their relationship. In total, 5 patients were murdered, all between the ages of 60 and 97. The crimes came to light in 1988 when Wood, after her relationship with Graham ended, confided in her ex-husband about the murders. He reported her statements to police, prompting an investigation that led to both women's arrests. During interrogation, Wood provided detailed accounts of the murders, which she said were primarily executed by Graham. In 1989, both women were tried in Michigan courts. Wood accepted a plea agreement in exchange for her testimony against Graham. Graham was convicted of 5 counts of murder and 1 count of conspiracy, receiving multiple life sentences without parole. Wood was sentenced to 20 to 40 years in prison. The case shocked the healthcare industry and raised questions about oversight in nursing homes. 5 vulnerable elderly patients entrusted to the care of these women were murdered as part of a twisted relationship dynamic. Gwendolyn Graham remains imprisoned, serving life without parole. Catherine Wood was released on parole after serving her minimum sentence. Case 15. Catherine Margaret Birnie. October 6, 1986. Perth, Australia. A young woman named Mary Nielsen vanished without a trace. She would be the first of 4 victims in a series of horrifying abductions and murders that would become known as the Moorhouse Murders, named after the quiet suburban street where unimaginable horrors took place. Catherine Margaret Birnie was born in Western Australia into a troubled household marked by instability and emotional neglect. Her teenage years were filled with petty crime and poor choices. In her 30s, she reconnected with David Birnie, a man she had known years earlier. They formed a relationship built on shared violent fantasies that would soon become deadly reality. Catherine and David lived together at 3 Morehouse Street in Willagee, a suburb of Perth. To neighbors, they appeared ordinary, quiet, and unremarkable. But inside their home, they were planning abductions driven by twisted sexual desires. Between October 6th and November 5th, 1986, they targeted 4 young women. The victims were Mary Nielsen, Susanna Candy, Nolene Patterson, and Denise Brown. Catherine often played the lure, approaching the women with fabricated stories, asking for directions, offering rides, pretending to need help. Once the victims were in their car, David would overpower them. The women were taken to the Morehouse Street house, where they were restrained, assaulted, and murdered. After killing their victims, the Birnies buried the bodies in bushland near Glen Eagle and Wanneroo, remote areas outside Perth. They believed the isolation would keep their crimes hidden indefinitely. For weeks, they succeeded, but their arrogance led to a fatal mistake. On November 10, 1986, they abducted a 5th intended victim, 17-year-old Kate Moore. Kate was taken to the Morehouse house, where she endured unspeakable horrors. But Kate was a fighter. She waited for an opportunity. When David briefly left the house, Kate managed to escape. She fled barefoot and half-dressed, running to a nearby residence where she called police. Officers responded immediately. Acting on Kate's account, they arrested Catherine and David Birnie at their home later that day. During interrogation, both confessed to the murders. They led investigators to the burial sites where the bodies of the 4 victims were recovered. Catherine Birnie was charged with 4 counts of murder and 1 count of abduction. Her trial took place in 1987 at the Supreme Court of Western Australia. Both she and David pleaded guilty. The evidence was overwhelming, and their confessions left no room for doubt. Catherine was sentenced to life imprisonment without the possibility of parole. The judge made it clear she would never be released. Her crimes were too heinous, her lack of remorse too absolute. David Birnie received the same sentence. Catherine Margaret Birnie was convicted of murdering 4 young women. She carried out the attacks alongside her partner, using abduction, restraint, and brutal violence. Catherine Birnie remains imprisoned in Australia. David Birnie took his own life in prison in 2005, but Catherine continues serving her sentence, a living reminder of the Morehouse murders' horror.
Case 16. Amelia Dyer. April 1896. Caversham, Reading, England. Police pulled a small package from the River Thames. Inside was the body of a baby girl wrapped in paper. On the paper was an address that would lead investigators to one of Victorian England's most prolific and heartless killers. Amelia Elizabeth Dyer was born in Bristol and trained as a nurse and midwife. In the late 19th century, illegitimacy carried crushing social stigma. Unwed mothers faced ostracism, poverty, and desperation. Amelia saw opportunity in their suffering. She advertised services as a baby farmer, offering to adopt unwanted infants for a fee. At first, she placed children with other families, but greed overtook her. Caring for children cost money. Killing them was cheaper and more profitable. She kept the fees and eliminated the expense. Over the years, she murdered countless infants, using white tape or dressmaking ribbon to strangle them. Their tiny bodies were disposed of in rivers, weighted down with bricks. Her crimes continued for decades. Some estimates suggest she murdered as many as 400 infants over 30 years, though the exact number will never be known. She moved frequently, changing addresses to avoid suspicion. But eventually, her luck ran out. The body discovered in the Thames belonged to Helena Fry, a baby girl entrusted to Dyer's care. The paper wrapping bore Dyer's address. Police traced it to her home in Caversham. Inside, they found baby clothes, vaccination papers, and other incriminating evidence linking her to multiple disappearances. Amelia Dyer was arrested in April 1896. During interrogation, she confessed to several murders, though she downplayed the scale of her crimes. Authorities believed the true number of victims was far higher. The evidence painted a picture of systematic, calculated infanticide driven purely by greed. Her trial took place at the Old Bailey in May 1896. It lasted only a few days. Dyer attempted to plead insanity, citing a history of mental breakdowns and erratic behavior. Medical experts examined her and rejected her claim. They found her legally sane and fully responsible for her actions. The jury deliberated briefly before returning a guilty verdict. She was convicted of one count of murder, representing the many children she had killed. The judge sentenced her to death by hanging. There was no mercy, no leniency. Victorian society demanded justice for the innocent lives she had taken. On June 10, 1896, Amelia Dyer was executed by hanging at Newgate Prison in London. She was in her 50s, a woman who had spent decades preying on society's most vulnerable. Her execution was swift and final.
Case 17. Jane Toppan. Boston, Massachusetts, late 19th century. Jane Toppan worked as a nurse, trusted with the care of society's most vulnerable. She appeared cheerful and capable, beloved by colleagues. But behind her warm smile lay a monstrous secret. She was experimenting on patients, testing how various doses of morphine affected the human body. Her fascination turned to obsession, then to murder. Jane Toppan was born Honora Kelly in Boston. Her early life was marked by tragedy. Her mother died young, and her father was institutionalized for insanity. The Toppan family adopted her, giving her their surname and a chance at a better life. In her early 30s, she entered nursing in Cambridge Hospital, where her dark impulses first emerged. Toppan began administering morphine to patients, experimenting with dosages. She observed their reactions, recording how different amounts affected vital signs, consciousness, and death. Her fascination was scientific at first, but soon became something darker. She derived pleasure from watching patients die, holding them as life slipped away. Her first recorded victims were elderly and vulnerable patients at Cambridge Hospital, including Israel Dunham and his wife. She poisoned them under the guise of treatment. When hospital staff noticed unusual patient deaths during her shifts, she was dismissed. But instead of stopping, she continued her work privately as a nurse. Toppan moved frequently, working in homes across Massachusetts. She administered lethal doses to her employers and their relatives. Among her most notable victims was her foster sister, Elizabeth Toppan, whom she poisoned out of jealousy. She also murdered members of the Davis family in Catomet, Massachusetts, systematically killing them one by one. The deaths finally drew attention when Etna Bannister, a surviving relative, grew suspicious of Toppan's presence. After the sudden death of Genevieve Gordon, authorities ordered an autopsy. Forensic analysis revealed lethal traces of morphine, confirming murder. Jane Toppan was arrested and questioned. During interrogation, she confessed to at least 31 murders, though investigators believed the actual number was much higher. She claimed she derived excitement and pleasure from holding victims as they died, describing it in disturbingly intimate terms. Her trial revealed the full extent of her depravity. Psychiatrists examined her and found her legally insane, suffering from severe mental illness. She was committed to Taunton Insane Hospital, where she would spend the rest of her life rather than face execution. Jane Toppan was convicted of multiple murders, carried out using morphine poisoning. Her case shocked Victorian America and highlighted dangers within the medical profession. She spent decades in psychiatric custody, never expressing genuine remorse for her crimes. Jane Toppan died in the asylum in 1938 at the age of 84, having spent nearly 40 years institutionalized. As of 2025, she remains one of America's most notorious female serial killers, remembered for her chilling confession. "I want to have killed more people, more helpless people, than any man or woman who has ever lived." These women remind us how darkness can hide behind an ordinary face. But the list doesn't end here. If you thought these were the worst, wait till you see part 2. Subscribe so you don't miss it. Thanks for watching.